Well, a very good morning to you all, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much indeed for joining us this morning. My name is Dr. David Bull. I'm the Deputy Leader of Reform UK, and it's my great pleasure to welcome you here all this morning for what is a truly exciting announcement. Now, I think it's fair to say Reform UK has been on an extraordinary and exponential journey over the last 2 years. We are now polling at around 10% consistently in polls. And the thing is that the electorate are very disillusioned. They're very disillusioned with the two main parties. The Conservative Party seems to have forgotten it's meant to be conservative. We have the highest tax burden in 70 years, and the Labour Party doesn't seem to have any cogent policies whatsoever. And this today marks a new chapter in our history. This is all about making Britain great, something we all in the party feel incredibly passionate about. It gives me great pleasure now to introduce a gentleman who is responsible for me standing to become a member of the European Parliament. I blame him entirely. He's the Honorary President of Reform UK. Ladies and gentlemen, Nigel Farage.
Good morning. So for the avoidance of any doubt, Reform UK is the direct descendant of the Brexit Party. People seem to think that it's a separate entity. It isn't. I set the Brexit Party up in 2019 and launched it because I thought there'd been the most outrageous attempt by many in Parliament and large sections of the media to completely undermine the result of the 2016 referendum. And whilst there were some holdouts in Parliament, the Spartans, actually, Mrs. May was still there as Prime Minister. She couldn't be challenged for a long time. I thought a second referendum was getting ever closer. Boris Johnson, Jacob Rees-Mogg, people that we thought were true Brexiteers, in the end had supported her deal, which we thought was the most terrible sellout. So I launched the party. It was hugely successful. Within 6 weeks, we got rid of Theresa May as Prime Minister, which I'm especially proud of, and opened the door, inevitably, for Boris Johnson to become Prime Minister. His deal, well, it was better than Mrs. May's, although not hugely, but in the end, we pretty much stood aside in the general election, certainly against all the sitting Conservative MPs, and we all believed, I think, that with a majority of 80, not only would we leave the European Union, but actually we'd finish up getting the job done, getting it completed. The slogan under which we ran for the Brexit Party was changing politics for good. Brexit wasn't just about leaving the European Union, it was about a new, different kind of politics in this country, inside reformed institutions. Well, 3.5 years on, we find that Brexit has not been completed. Part of the United Kingdom has been hived off and is still being controlled by the European Commission. Vast swathes of industry that were looking forward to benefits, the fishing industry being one, have seen virtually nothing in their favour. Regulations have not been axed. And on the really big one, on the issue that actually got Brexit over the line in 2016, namely control of our borders, well, not only do we have what's been happening in the English Channel, but legal net migration last year was running at 500,000. So 3.5 years on, Brexit has not been completed. We're still under the jurisdiction of a foreign court in Strasbourg. Our borders are as open as they have literally ever been. We have a high tax, big state, low growth, low productivity society, and our public services are fundamentally broken. So I think choosing the name Reform was a good title, very apt, very appropriate. That's what we need. This party has made strides over the course of the last few months, and I think there is a political gap big enough for it to make very, very many more. My role within this, let's be absolutely clear, for the avoidance of doubt, my role in this is honorary and advisory. For the second time, I've managed to get my life back. I said that in 2016, never really wanting to re-enter the fray, so I'm here to help and advise, but I do want to say that Richard Tice has kept this ship afloat pretty much on his own over the course of the last couple of years. It's been no easy thing to do. And today he's got some pretty significant reinforcements coming in to help him to spread the message, to spread the burden. As I say, I'm here to help and advise in any way I can, but I really believe we're much at a juncture that we were exactly 10 years ago. Exactly 10 years ago, UKIP was considered to be pretty much a fringe party, one that might save the odd deposit in a by-election, but would never do better than that. And actually, as it became clear to the electorate that the differences between Labour, the Conservatives and the Lib Dems were almost non-existent, it was in 2013 that UKIP began to rise and, like it or not, have a significant effect on the shape of British politics. The job for reform is even bigger than the task that was faced by UKIP. Ours was a simple one, to achieve and help win a referendum. This is about getting our entire country back on track, changing the priorities of our government and opposition. And I'm here to help in absolutely every way, but I will now hand over to the leader of Reform, Richard Tice. Richard, thank you.
Good morning, and thank you, Nigel, for that introduction, and indeed for your wisdom, for your wise counsel and support and advice, which has been invaluable over the last couple of years. Now, we love our United Kingdom, but never before have we heard from so many people that they feel the country is broken. Is it in a sort of a doom loop spiral downwards? People are so concerned the main two parties are letting everybody down. But I'm an optimist. I believe that with the right leadership, if we do Brexit properly, if we save the Union, we don't leave Northern Ireland behind, then actually we can make the whole of the United Kingdom great again. But to do that, as Nigel touched on, there are some fundamental, major reforms that are needed. I'm going to just touch on four today. Firstly, we've got to reform the way our economy is working. At the moment, it's frankly not working. We've got to reduce taxes. We've got to reduce the daft regulation so that people feel better off and we get higher wages. Absolutely crucial. Part of the Brexit objective. Secondly, we've got to reform our system of healthcare so that we have that ambitious target of zero waiting lists, better health outcomes. Thirdly, we've got to reform our energy market. We're sitting on a pile of energy treasure. We are rich in our own energy treasure. So we've got to reform that so that we have a cheap, self-reliant supply of energy. And fourthly, obviously, we've got to reform our immigration policy so that we have a sensible, workable, lawful immigration policy that works for our economy, works for the British people, and works for where we've got genuine shortages of skills. But we have to stop illegal immigration, and we have to stop the boats. And there's no question, only Reform UK's six-point plan will stop the boats. Why? Because it's based on what works in Australia. Now, we've got the May elections just ahead. We'll be standing some 500 candidates or so in those May elections. They'll be incredibly important. But also, we are building towards the general election whenever it comes. I've committed before, and we absolutely reinforce today, we will be standing everywhere across the whole of England, Scotland and Wales, some 630 candidates. It's a big job, but we mean business. Now, 2 years ago, we started from a sort of standing start. But here we are now, 8, 9, 10% in polls, regularly polling third. We're making great progress. But in order to build that momentum, to take us to the next stage, and we're incredibly grateful, I'm massively grateful to the team that we've had who've been working so hard, the core team, the supporters, the activists, the volunteers, getting us to where we are today. But as I say, it is a big job. And therefore, we need even more help. And the more help, the better. It's hugely welcome. And that's why I'm so delighted today that essentially the band is reforming. Yes, indeed, because I'm able to announce that many of the former Brexit Party MEPs that Nigel touched on earlier are joining Reform UK as we continue this journey of growth so that we shape, influence and have a real impact on the next general election. And people should be under no illusions. We mean business. So I want to give a massive, massive welcome to the former Brexit Party MEPs, some of whom are with here today, some of whom are not. Firstly, of course, the amazing, hard-working Anne Widdecombe. Anne, very warm welcome. Followed, I call him Brexit Ben, but he's known to most people as Ben Habib. Ben, a very warm welcome to the team. And then the guru of fishing, a huge stalwart for the fishing industry, June Mummery. Welcome, June. Brilliant.
I'm being misdirected.
And then also from the world of business, Jonathan Bullock. A massive welcome to Jonathan. And also Belinda DeLucy. Wonderful to have Belinda back in the band as well. And I'm also pleased to say that whilst they can't be here today, two other former MEPs, Rupert Lowe, the businessman and farmer, he's rejoining today, and also Christina Jordan. So that now totals 11 former Brexit Party MEPs as part of the gang, of the band, as we take this party forward into the local elections and towards the general election. With hard work, with effort, we will make a real massive difference. And I want to thank everybody for essentially sort of stepping up, putting their head above the parapet again and going for it. So what I'm going to do now is we're going to ask first Ben and then Anne to say a few words, and then I'll take some questions from anybody afterwards. Great. Ben.
Well, thank you, Richard. Thank you, Richard, and thank you, Nigel. I'm going to just turn my timer on because I'm on a time of 4 minutes. I can't get the thing to work. Right. Thank you all for coming. Thank you first and foremost to Nigel for yanking me out of a quiet business life, family life, into the public eye, having to fight to get what we would have thought was something that's quite straightforward and simple. At the heart of Brexit, all we're championing is British national interest. You would have thought that is something our political class would just deliver and we could take for granted. But thank you, Nigel, for putting me in this fight. And thank you, Richard, for keeping the flame of reform alive, for allowing us, therefore, the opportunity to come back into the political fray and to get Brexit done properly. Now, Brexit is not some kind of ideological obsession. I'm not called Brexit Ben because I'm some kind of nutter who wants to go around and at any cost get Brexit. The reason I want Brexit, as I've already intimated, is at its heart, it is putting British national interest first. And it's not as if the Conservatives don't understand what Brexit is. If you look at page 5 of the Conservative Party manifesto, it states quite clearly, Brexit is taking back control of our laws, our borders, our cash, and our fish. It is the country leaving the EU as one united kingdom. And when we got that manifesto pledge from Boris Johnson and he got his 80-seat majority, I thought that was my job done. I didn't entirely trust him, and I said at the time that I would monitor what's going on from the sidelines. And that we did. But the biggest breach of the promises he made in his manifesto was leaving Northern Ireland behind in the European Union. We have a part of the United Kingdom that is subject entirely to foreign laws made by a foreign legislature and enforced by a foreign court. That ladies and gentlemen, is a fundamental undermining of the fabric of the United Kingdom and an abuse of our sovereignty. No one who counts themselves as a British citizen could allow that to subsist. I brought a court case against the government, and the Supreme Court adjudicated that the foundations of the United Kingdom, the very acts of union that created this country, have been subjugated as a result of that protocol. And the Windsor framework that Rishi Sunak has championed as his great solution is no solution at all. Actually, it reasserts the protocol. It puts in stone the EU laws, which actually have only been applied in a light touch way so far. There will be no getting Northern Ireland back into the United Kingdom under the Windsor framework. And as Richard mentioned, in addition to that, this government has taxed, borrowed, and spent our money to the point of economic destruction. It is neither conservative nor is it unionist. The public sector is broken, the labour force is broken, inflation is at a 40-year high, taxes at a 70-year high, government debt at a 70-year high. This is no way for the United Kingdom to be governed. So very reluctantly, I've come back into party politics. And I've done it, and I'm going to throw my full weight behind Richard Tice and David Bull. And I want to thank David as well. You know, a lot of good people go unmentioned. David, you've been fantastic in this fight. And I'm going to throw my full weight behind these two gentlemen and make sure that no stone is left unturned to hold the Tory government to account and eject it from office in 2024, whenever the next general election comes, to get them out. We need a sea change in the way this country is governed. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you very much, Ben. As you can see, he hasn't lost any of the energy and the passion and the drive, and that's exactly what we want. And I think we all know that all of those characteristics are central to Anne Widdecombe. Anne.
Thank you, Richard. Now, when the Brexit Party dissolved and morphed into Reform, I did not join Reform. There were various reasons why I didn't, but now the reason that I'm joining Reform, along with another 10 of the former Brexit Party MEPs, is because it is very clear that it is the only way to save the Union. And I do not believe that that is an exaggeration. We have left Northern Ireland in the single market, while the rest of the UK has withdrawn. And yet, as Ben said, it was made extremely clear in the Conservative Party manifesto that when we left the EU, we would leave as one united kingdom. We didn't say we were going to leave part of the United Kingdom behind in the EU, that part of the United Kingdom would be governed partly by the EU, that large tranches of its legislation would be set by the EU, that the EU would judge and still have jurisdiction over Northern Ireland. We never said any of that. And yet that is exactly what has happened. And what really, for me, was the final straw was the way that Rishi Sunak came back waving, almost peace in our time, and announced that the Stormont break was going to allow Northern Ireland to veto EU law. He said it in terms. That was not true, because the Stormont break is so hedged about, so qualified, so restricted in application that it is virtually impossible for Northern Ireland to veto EU law with which they don't agree. He said we had control of our VAT. That is not true in Northern Ireland. He said we had control of state aid. That is not wholly true in Northern Ireland either. And there were the Conservative benches behind him cheering and whooping, and this was wonderful. And just hours later, people like Ben had actually started looking at the texts. The DUP lawyers had started looking at the texts, and they realised that all that was, to use a polite word, overspin, in fact, was a load of lies. And that, for me, was the final straw in what has been a very uncertain journey since the Brexit Party morphed into Reform. I was politically homeless for a long time because I thought the Conservative Party might just go back to being Conservative, but it hasn't. And I wonder if it ever will in my lifetime. As Ben said, it isn't Conservative, and it certainly isn't Unionist, and I am moved by a desire to save the Union. Because if you leave part of the United Kingdom under the rule of EU law, then inevitably it will eventually come to the conclusion that it can't serve two masters. And so the future of the Union itself, I think, is imperilled by the Windsor Framework, but that's only the most recent. We had Theresa May's abominable proposals, with which Boris then tinkered. And now Rishi has tinkered with the tinkering. It isn't tinkering that we need, it is root and branch reform, whereby Northern Ireland is reabsorbed 100%, not even 99.9%, but 100% into the United Kingdom. And finally, let me say this, the border issue was always a distraction. The EU itself said in 2017, the EU, not the Brexit Party, not anybody else, the EU said that the border could be policed by technology, thereby preventing turning it into a hard border. And that was what we should have pursued, instead of putting a border down the Irish Sea and hiving off Northern Ireland from the rest of the UK. Now, as I say, I'm here to save the Union. It is my overwhelming motive in joining Reform after having refused to do so for some time. And I've been subject to quite a lot of pressure, which I've resisted. But there was recently a meeting of the Brexit Party MEPs who just said, we ain't got Brexit, and what's much worse, we're losing Northern Ireland. Thank you.
Thank you, Anne. Absolutely fantastic to have tempted you back, because it is so important. And as you can see, Ben and Anne, or all of the others, are full of verve, passion, drive, and absolute commitment. We must save the Union, that the Conservatives have put at risk. We must do Brexit properly. And if we do that, then we can make the whole of the United Kingdom great again. So, I just want to say a massive thanks to all of my MEPs, in particular my deputy, who keeps me on the straight and narrow, and now happy to open the floor up to some questions from the media. Sorry, Nick Eardley from the BBC.
Thanks, Richard. On Brexit, there doesn't seem to be much of a sign of a major rebellion in Parliament. Rishi Sunak's talking a pretty tough game on immigration. What makes you think there's actually room for another party? Are you just stuck fighting yesterday's battles? And if I may, I know he's gone up the back, but Nigel, are you ruling out ever standing for Parliament again? Some might wonder if you think there's such an appetite for this party, if you might throw your hat in the ring again.
So, Nick, I'll take that question, and if you want to have a chat with Nigel afterwards, obviously very welcome to do so. But there's a huge gap in the market. You've only got to look at Matt Goodwin's book that's just come out, where he's saying about 50% of voters are now feeling abandoned, left aside, politically homeless by the two main parties, that in our view are two sides of the same socialist coin of high taxes, high, very often wasteful government spending, leading to low growth. And people voted for Brexit because they knew the country needed to change direction. So yes, I think absolutely there is a huge appetite. Many people here and others gave the Conservatives a chance. They feel that they've completely blown it. They've messed up. The country is in a shocking state, but we can get it back. But it requires reform, and that's why it's such a big job, and I'm so delighted we've got so many people here willing to put their shoulder, their hard work, their time and effort into the cause. So there's a huge gap, huge opportunity. We've gone from 0 to 9, 10%, and we are heading upwards, ever forwards. Who's next?
There doesn't seem to be sign of much rebellion in the Tory party. Sorry, you said there didn't appear to be much sign of rebellion. That is because now too many of them, including some former quite strong Brexiteers, are putting the party before the union because they can see a general election on the horizon.
Thank you. Yes, there we go.
From The Guardian, Peter Walker. Your plan to stand in all 630 seats, you will inevitably end up mainly taking Conservative votes. And it seems that if you do that, it'll make a Labour or Lib Dem government more likely. Is that actually your aim, and do you want to, above all else, just make sure the Conservatives lose power?
Well, let's be very clear. There's no difference between the two main parties now. As I said just now, they're two sides of the same socialist coin. It doesn't matter who you vote for. If you vote for those two main parties, you will get high tax, you will get high wasteful spending, you'll get ever worse public services, you'll get higher energy costs, you'll get low growth. That is a doom spiral. We're presenting a clear, credible, bold alternative. And be under no illusion, there are many, many former Labour Party voters who've had enough of them, who voted Brexit, who voted for change. They lent their vote to the Brexit Party, and they are now saying, actually, the Labour Party no longer represents me, and that's what actually Reform UK does. So, look, there is a huge shift going on. No one's saying it's easy. It's not. But one thing's for sure, we're in the room, we're going to be on the ballot paper everywhere, and everybody has that genuine democratic choice. Ben, do you want to add anything to that?
I'm really glad. Thank you, Richard. At the heart of proper governance is ensuring you don't reward failure with incumbency. And this Conservative Party approach that is, basically says, well, we know we're bad, but the other lot are worse. That line has to stop. The Conservative Party has utterly failed. 13 years of Conservative governance, no growth, taxation at a record high, national debt at a record high, inflation at a 40-year high, the public sector broken, the labour market broken, record number of people on universal credit. We have to toast the Conservative Party. They have to be obliterated, and that is my aim. I am here to obliterate the Conservative Party because they are not Conservative, and I will not step down. Sorry, I said we.
Great. Who's next? Yes, just there in the middle. From the Telegraph and then from the Express.
Hi, yeah, Amy Gibbons from the Telegraph. So you mentioned there's appetite among voters who are perhaps unhappy with the way Brexit is working out, but what about Tory MPs? Are you in touch or in talks with any disaffected Tories who might be looking to join Reform?
Look, we welcome help from all quarters, and there's no question there are some very disaffected Tory MPs, but what we're seeing at the moment is a sort of support Sunak operation that Anne quite rightly said, frankly, is disgraceful because they are trying to prop up their failing party as opposed to do what is right for the country. And what I say to everybody is the country's future is at stake, and that's what we're doing, standing everywhere, and we mean business. Be under no illusion.
So you mentioned you're open to help from them. Would you be able to say if you are?
They know where we are. They know our telephone number. That's all I'm going to say.
Thank you.
David Maddox from the Express, just behind.
Thanks, Richard. I just want to go back to Peter's question there and just get to your actual goal here. I think, sort of following on from what Ben said, is the aim here to destroy the Conservative Party or to replace the Conservative Party?
Look, be clear. The aim is to make the great whole United Kingdom, to make sure that we save the Union, that we make it whole. We've got to do Brexit properly, because it's only by doing that, after all that everybody's been through. If you're going to do a job, for heaven's sake, do it properly. There are massive opportunities from it. That's what we are absolutely determined to ensure. That's what makes the country great again. And in a sense, everything else is a subset of that key objective. And that's how you will make the opportunities for everybody in this country way, way better.
I would also say the Conservatives are destroying themselves. No one's destroying the Conservatives. They've been doing a very good job of that for the past few years. They have been on a mission to alienate all their voters that trusted them so much in 2019, put faith in this party that they were going to really stand up for them and listen to them. They've chosen not to do that. They've chosen tough rhetoric over very little action. And I think, you know, it's about choice. And in the next election, people need to have more choice, not just the Tories on the right and everyone else on the left. So I'm very excited to join Reform UK.
On the right, yes, just there. Two there. Let's take the front first. There we go. Well done.
Thank you. Catherine Forster for the Broadcast Pool. You've described Labour and Conservatives as two sides of the same socialist coin. You're promising lower taxes, high wages, zero waiting lists, which all sounds fabulous, but why should people believe that you've actually got the answers, can make these things happen? Because you were the Brexit Party and you've admitted yourself Brexit's not been a wild success so far.
It's very simple, because everyone recognises that those are the key challenges. It's factually true we've got the highest taxes for 70 years. It's factually true we've got the highest government spending, but we've already been putting forward big, clear solutions to those challenges. How you can sensibly reduce taxes, how you can cut wasteful government spending, so that you get the growth. That's what you've got to do. You've got to support small businesses. So look, we put forward the plans. Those will be enhanced in the run-up to the general election. Then people can make their own mind up. But at least this time, they will have a genuine alternative choice. We're the first people that ever came up with this bold ambition of zero waiting lists. Most Western nations don't have waiting lists. Why do we put up with it? Let's challenge ourselves. Let's come up with the solutions. But to do that, it requires fundamental reform. The key is in the name. What you see is what you get. You'll get reform. Just behind you, sorry, thank you.
Thank you very much. You've promised to stop the boats, of course, similar language to what the Prime Minister's using. What would you do differently then? Because, well, go on.
The truth is, I think he took our slogan, actually, because we've been talking about it for months. Look, what would we do differently? We've got a clear 6-point plan, and what the government doing, look, there's no question that Suella Braverman is she's absolutely putting her heart and soul into it. But the reality is the Conservative Party in Westminster won't let her carry it out. I've met a former head of the Australian Border Force. Look, we know what works, and we've got a clear 6-point plan. You've got to leave the ECHR. You've got to set up a whole new department of immigration, staffed by people who believe in the cause of secure borders. You've got to have offshore processing centres. You've got to make it clear that nobody would be allowed to resettle here. That's exactly what Australia did. And then, under existing laws, you can pick up and safely take people back on the boats, take them back to France. You can do that under existing legislation. Let's be clear, the safest, most compassionate thing to do is that nobody leaves the beaches of France. And under existing law, we can do that. That's what should be done. That's what would work. That is what would stop the business model. But the Tories won't do it.
But, sorry, just on that, so would you scrap the Rwanda plan? Do you think it can work? The Home Secretary obviously spent the weekend in Rwanda.
It's part of offshore processing centres, whether it's Rwanda, whether it's someone else. But from everything we hear about the Rwanda plan, you're talking about a few hundred. It'll make zero difference whatsoever.
Can I ask just one more very quickly? Your logo, Let's Make Britain Great, quite Trumpian language, you would say. And why does it not say Let's Make Britain Great Again? You know, was Britain never great at the start, or was it perhaps lack of space?
Look, in a sense, look, we love our country. We know that it has been a great nation. We've got to make it a great nation again. We will do that. You've got to believe in it. You've got to go for it. And I think that's what we can do. We've got to give confidence to people. We're optimists. We know we can do that, but it really does require some fundamental changes, some fundamental reform. From the Mirror, hi.
Hi, thank you. Two quick questions. So I just wondered also on bringing down waiting lists, obviously everyone wants waiting lists to come down. How will your party specifically be able to do that? It's a tough job. Lots of people have tried. How will you get that down to 0? And secondly, on Nigel not standing, I just wonder from your perspective as party leader, he's a recognised face, he's got a large following. Are you disappointed at all that he won't be standing?
Well, firstly, deal with the latter point. Nigel's been an absolute font of counsel, advice and support, for which I'm very grateful for, everybody's very grateful for, and we absolutely know that that will continue. Look, on healthcare, you talk about this, but we are the first people to talk about zero waiting lists, to remind the country that most other Western nations don't have waiting lists. I love it when Keir Starmer says the NHS needs reform. That's absolutely right. The whole country needs reform. It needs Reform UK. We put forward a bold healthcare plan in December, how to get more staff into the NHS, how to deal with it, how to pay for it. You've got to use much greater use of the private sector. All of these things we will be increasing in more detail in the run-up to the general election. But I think our plans will be the most significant, the most fundamental reform, and frankly, what's going on at the moment in terms of the state of the NHS under this Conservative government is nothing short of a national disgrace.
Can I just add something to that, if I may? We spent 170... So obviously my background, I'm a medic. We spend 176 billion a year, another 36 billion on top of that. Everyone, all the other parties keep saying, oh, it's the world leading the NHS. Well, quite frankly, it isn't. Our outcomes are terrible, and it is simply unacceptable that people have to wait so long to get treatment. We saw what happened in COVID. People have died as a result of terrible government policies. And so the whole thing, as Richard says, needs radical root and branch reform. When you look at actually the staffing numbers, something like just under 50% are non-clinical. If it was a private business, you would never run the NHS like that. So we need to strip out all these sways of management. Every time you impose a target, you need someone to measure whether you've actually reached that target. It should be about outcomes, not about targets.
Thank you. I think we have to draw it to a close. Just one time for one more quick question, please.
I've got about 5 questions.
Choose one, sir.
Thanks very much. What's the current membership? And could I have a show of hands who amongst the panel is intending to stand as an MP at the next election?
So the membership's been growing rapidly. We don't give the total number, but it's been growing very rapidly, particularly since so many people realised that the Conservative Party was no longer Conservative when Liz Truss was ousted and Jeremy Hunt was installed as Chancellor. So growing rapidly, many people will stand. And as I say, we're standing absolutely everywhere. So individual MEPs, former MEPs will make their own mind up who's standing where. Obviously, it's a bit of a jigsaw that we are completing, and that will all be done over the next few months.
A very time-sensitive, quick show of hands would be done in 2 seconds, and everybody could see just how committed you are to...
Well, I'm definitely going to have a go.
That's 1, 2...
I'm half a hand.
Look, we're working it all out as we speak. Some will stand, some won't be able to, but be under no illusion. We stand everywhere, 630 seats in England, Scotland and Wales.
If you ask that question in Parliament at the moment, an awful lot of MPs would tell you they were still making their mind up.
Are you making your mind up?
No, I'm ancient.
But massively appreciated. Thank you all very much indeed for attending, for the questions. Thank you to all of you watching on the live stream on social media. Thank you very much to all of the former MEPs who are joining Reform, to my deputy David Bull, to Alex Phillips and team, and we look forward to taking this great party forward. Thank you very much.